I've always had the juice, but now that I got my peach, everybody's getting kicked the fuck out of my house. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Raphael and I am here to review episode 11 of The Real Housewives are getting kicked out of the house of Atlanta. We start the episode off with everybody coming back home after they were all just having dinner where Kenya had popped up, but Kenya's not coming back home with them, nor is she spending the night. She has her own house that she's staying at down the street. Meanwhile, everybody else is lounging around in Marlo's Airbnb. They're all relaxing. At this point, I believe it was close to midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're all in the kitchen. So Marlo, she chooses to talk to them, and what does she choose the topic to be? Kenya more. I'm like, really, Marlo? It's close to midnight and you choose to talk about Kenya? No. There's so many things that you should be doing. There's probably a jacuzzi outside that you could be relaxing in. You could be swiping left or right on Tinder, looking for some dick. You could even be taking a hot shower, but you choose to talk about Kenya? That is too much. So she goes on and she tells the group, okay, so let's get one thing straight. So if Kenya Moore does not stay in my house tonight or the rest of the weekend, she's not allowed to do any of my activities. She is not doing anything with us if she's not staying with us underneath the same roof. And I'm like, well, okay, let's see what production has to say about that. So then the next day, everybody's waking up. Somebody's making bacon in the kitchen. The bacon looks so good and crispy. I'm like, ooh, the bacon looks so tasty. So then we see Drew. She's in her room. She's talking to her husband, Ralph, on the phone. He's trying to prove to her that he's not cheating while she's away. Sonia, she's talking to her mom about her 4 medals and, you know, catching her up with everything that's been going on with Marlo and Kenya. And speaking of Kenya, Kenya is outside creeping up, right? Like the Grinch stole Christmas. And she's like, dun-na, 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 na-na-na-na-na. She creeps into the house. I'm like, who opened the door for her? Production. Because you know Marlo probably added like some extra locks on the door to prevent her from coming in. So she goes in there, she finds Drew's room. She goes in and she's like, Drew, hey, how are you? Drew is so excited to see her because she's like, well, Kenya, I was so worried that you were not going to be on this cast trip. I thought that our ratings were going to be really, really low this week because you weren't going to be on this episode, but I'm so glad that you're here. How are you? And Kenya, instead of being nice, she was being shady towards the room and she's like, oh, wow, Drew, this is where you live, bitch. This is where you live. Velvet, show me around. Ooh, a white refrigerator. Ooh. It was the same energy that she was giving off as Nene 10 years ago. She's just looking around like, wow, it's so small and messy. It's so cute though. How are you, Drew? So then Sonia, she hears all the commotion, aka production told her, okay, Kenya's here. The show started, go. So Sonia, she goes over there, she's like, oh my God, Kenya, you're here. And then they all hug Marlo. I'm not sure what she was doing, but she hears Kenya. So she goes up to her and she's like, wow, Kenya, you made it to my house. I'm so glad you're here. Good morning. How are you, baby? How are you? Oh, give me a hug. And Kenya, right before she even hugged her, she was like, yeah. I'm like, Marlo, stop with the fake shit now. Like, you're trying to hug her. This is what I mean with Marlo. She throws every single low blow and skeleton that you shared to her to your face. And then what does she do 2 seconds later? Hey, I love you. Hey, baby girl. Mwah, mwah. Like, it does not work that way. Marlo, stop it. So Marlo, she's kind of caught off guard. Kenya, you know what Kenya was doing here? And I'm pretty sure that it was probably sincere, but she probably added a little extra more to it. She was trying to piss Marlo off because when you obviously have an issue with somebody, you want to show that you're unbothered and that you're having a good time and you're happy, even though your enemy is miserable, right? And that's what Kenya knew what she was doing. She knew, okay, I need to come into the house like already at a 10. I need to be so excited and happy and feel like Marlo's not bothering me, even though genuinely she probably wasn't bothering her deep down inside. But Kenya, she was just doing too much. She was like, oh, yo, I'm so ready to rock out today. I'm having a good time. She started doing like all these exorcist moves and shit, like bending her back backwards. I'm like, okay, Sierra, relax. She was really doing the Matrix like this and just having a good time with the rest of the women. So Marlo, obviously, that's going to get underneath her skin because she wants Kenya to also be miserable with her. So then Marlo, she sees her, she's like, Kenya, before we go anywhere, can you just come talk to me for a quick second after when you have time? And Kenya, she's ignoring her. She's like, la, 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 la. So then Marlo, she tells her again, Kenya, did you hear me? I said, can you talk to me for a second? So Kenya's like, yeah, I heard you. I'll be there in a couple of hours. So then Marlo, she walks away to get her glam done and to talk to her manager. Her manager is so far up her ass, she must be paying her really, really good. I'm surprised Marlo hasn't thrown her out too, the way Marlo's going on the show. So her manager's just like, you know, honestly, if Kenya's gonna be there, I hope that she has good spirits and good energy and she's not there just to ruin everything because you are a very genuine, happy person. You are not toxic, Marlo. And I'm like, that's all I needed to know between their relationship between the manager and Marlo. I'm like, yeah, the manager's gonna tell anything to Marlo as long as it makes her feel good, because I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean she's not toxic and she's a positive person? But okay, so then Kenya, she's downstairs with, I believe, Sonia. And Sonia, oh, Sonia, it's just so insane to me how Sonia has made a complete 160 trip from the very first episode. I really liked Sonia the first episode, and now I'm just like, okay, like it is what it is. And production or whoever is doing the casting, I just feel like they are not getting casting correctly. If you want to know who's doing casting correctly, is the Real Housewives of Dubai. Whoever casted Chanel Ayan, they deserve every single raise in the book, because they casted like a star with her. And I'm not sure why they keep missing the marks with Beverly Hills, with Diana, and now with Sonia. I mean, Sonia, she has potential. I mean, I would kind of like to see her back at some point, but I mean, she's just there. She doesn't give me the oomph. They're both talking about Marlo. Sonia, she chooses to be on Marlo's side. And I'm just like, of course you choose to be on that side. But okay, so she goes on to tell Kenya, you know, Marlo has it really rough right now. She just has this cold stone demeanor. But she's not really like that. She's a softie deep down inside. And you need to understand that. You know, that's why. So Kenya's just like, yeah, she was such a softie. Why did she kick her nephews out? And I'm like, whoop. Well, care to comment, Sonia? Sonia, she stayed quiet. She's trying to backpedal with Marlo, and she's like, well, you know, the thing is, Marlo's going through a lot right now. And I'm like, okay, so whose excuse is that? Like, everybody else is going through a lot. Kenya's going through a lot with her Kenya Moore hair care line, and you don't see her complaining or bringing that toxic energy into the group, right? So that's no valid excuse. Everybody's going through a lot in the world. So Kenya's like, that's no excuse. You know, I know what it feels like to be kicked out of my own home with my mom and my whole situation with that. And we all know how that is with her. And she's like, what she did with her nephews is completely wrong. Like, that's just going to add more trauma to them, which is exactly what I've been saying for the past 2 reviews. That Marlo is just completely fucked up for doing that. You're adding more to these kids' trauma, and you don't even realize that, for your own selfish gains. Why? Because all she needed then was for a storyline to get her peach. And here we go. So then Kenya, she's trying to tell Sonia, look, Sonia, it is what it is. Marlo's never going to learn. It is what it is. Me and Marlo just do not click like that. Sonia is trying to make them best friends. And I'm like, Sonia, you obviously have not seen the previous season of The Real Housewives of Atlanta and how their relationship is like really toxic. It's not something that, you know, it just came out of thin air all of a sudden recently. Like, this has been a history of ongoing battle between both of them. So Sonia, if I was you, I would just stay out of it and go play with your medals. So after her conversation with Kenya, where does she decide to go? To Sheree, out of all people. So she heads over to her in the kitchen, and she's like, Sheree, so I just got done talking to the star of the Housewives of Atlanta. And then Sheree's just like, who, Candy? So Sonia's like, no, I just got done talking to Kenya. What do you mean? So I just got done talking to her, and I just feel like I need to have a conversation with Marlo. I need to have a sit down with her to tell her what Kenya said about her and her nephews. So you know Sheree was just like, oh, really? You know she was so thirsty, like, yes, finally some drama, and I don't need to be the bone collector anymore. So Sonia's like, come with me, and all the camera crew, come with me too, because I'm going to have a scene. I need my peach for next season. So they get Marlo, and Marlo's looking at them, and she's like, what's going on? What's going on? It looks way too serious here. What's going on? Is there a problem? So they sit down, and Sonia starts off, and she's like, well, Marlo, I just need to tell you what Kenya said about you and your nephews. I mean, you won't believe it. She said some really, really diabolical things. I mean, she said that you couldn't dress. She said that you were a bad auntie. She just said that you had too many demons, that you were toxic, that she didn't even like this Airbnb, and that's why she didn't move in or anything. She's down the street. She just said that you were overall a really bad person and that you don't deserve your peach. So Marlo, she was just shocked. She was like, wait, what? Kenya said that about me? And I'm like, Marlo, why are you shocked? After everything you said about Kenya, why would you be upset if Kenya returned the same energy to you? And Sonia, why would you open your mouth? She goes on to say, oh, I'm not being a bone collector. I'm just trying to help their situation out and trying to mend things between them. And I'm like, no, again, just like I said a second ago, you obviously don't know the history between Kenya and Marlo. And something like you a newbie, you are just not going to fix things out of thin air. Like, oh, okay, like, you know, I'm talking to you, Marlo, about what Kenya said. Maybe you two could talk it out. No, you're not going to be the one to fix this. Like, it's not going to happen. I don't think it's ever honestly going to be fixed. So Sheree, she's just sitting there on the edge of the bed like, go on, keep going, yes, go on, my pretty. You know, because obviously she doesn't have to, she's a puppet master now, and she's controlling Sonia without Sonia really noticing. And Marlo, she's like, you know what? You know what we're going to do? We're going to do a prayer. We're going to do a prayer for Kenya because, you know, this whole trip was all about positivity. I'm like, oh, okay, that's where you have me again. Positivity? I'm telling you, it's like Marlo doesn't know what she's saying versus what she's doing. I'm like, all of a sudden now this trip is about positivity. But just a second ago, you and Kenya, But just a second ago, you were saying this about Candy. But okay, so apparently the trip is about positivity all of a sudden. And Marlo, she's all about flowers and rainbows. And then they do a prayer. And she's like, okay, let's do a prayer, Sonia and Sheree. So let's pray on Kenya being this grown woman and leaving Michael and William's name out her mouth and just leaving me alone and leaving my demons by myself and leaving her demons by herself. And let's hope that she gets to be a 66-year-old woman. I'm like, wait a minute. What kind of prayer is this? You know the Lord was just looking down at this conversation like, Marlo, no. It kind of reminded me of that prayer from Flavor of Love. If you watched that show, season 2, I believe, with Safari and H-Town. After Safari just got done whooping H-Town's ass, she was on her knees praying to God, and she was like, please, God, please help me find the energy to not whoop this bitch's ass. It was the same exact type of prayer. Kenya and Candy, who are both businesswomen, sit down with Sheree to talk about her line, She's Never Gonna Happen by Sheree. So Sheree's just like, yeah, I'm ready for the tips. Give me all the tips. And I just feel like she wasn't really taking it serious. I'm like, come on now, Sheree, like your brand is known all worldwide, or at least, you know, in Atlanta. Or in the United States, or on the East Coast. But you know, like, you're not even taking it serious. I just feel like Kenya was trying to give her pointers, and Sheree was just like, yeah, no, I have my memory. I'm gonna remember everything you said. But I just feel like Sheree's just not taking it serious for some reason. Candy goes on to tell her some more advice, and she's like,
there really shouldn't be any excuse for you, Sheree, to not have any type of merchandise or to have a website up so people could buy She by Sheree clothing or any type of products. You know what I'm saying, Sheree? I just feel like there's no excuse for it. I feel like you should have an empire already, Sheree Whitfield, and I just feel like you're not really taking it serious or anything.
So Sheree's just like, you know, I completely agree, Candy. You know, I'm gonna be on my businesswoman stuff right now. Like, I'm gonna get into it, and don't worry, it's gonna be a big empire. And I'm like, Sheree, come on now. I've been rooting for you for like, what now, 25 years already? Of watching you on the show? Come on now. I want to see some clothing. I want to support. So then Marlo walks by, and for a second, I thought that she had a tool belt around her waist, but it was just kind of like one of those fashionable, like Fendi or Louis Vuitton belts. And I'm like, oh, okay, interesting fashion. So she opens up the door. She's like, oh, I have a new guest. They open up the door, and who is it? It's Fatum. I just truly don't understand why they're trying to force Fatum down our throats. Like, nobody cares about her. She reminds me of Giovanna from a couple seasons ago. She's Giovanna 2.0. She's just so desperate and thirsty. And she's the type of desperate and thirsty on the Housewives shows that I do not like seeing. I mean, you could be delusional, you could be desperate, you could be thirsty, you could be all of that. But when you're at that type of level of desperation, the way Fatum and Giovanna is, I just don't like seeing it, because she'll do anything to have a peach or to have some type of relevancy on this show. I mean, at this point, Fatum, you're not going to get a peach. You're not even going to get the little leaf that comes on the peach. You know, the little green leaf? You're not going to get the branch. You're not going to get the seed. You're not going to get anything. So just stop it. Like, just make your exit and leave it at that. And I'm so glad that Drew just does not pay attention to her. Drew's just like, who invited her? But she walks away from her instead of giving her any type of energy. So then Marlo, she's like, okay, so the activity for today, we're all going to go gem mining. We're all going to go gem mining. And I'm like, what the hell is gem mining? I never heard of that. So she goes on to explain that it's kind of like this activity that you like look through the dirt or something, basically, to try to look like for diamonds or gems or something, you know, important or whatever. And I'm like, oh, so this is what we're doing? I'd rather stay at the mansion and call it a day. I mean, what are we doing? Like gem mining? Like seriously, Marlo, out of all the activities that you could do, this is what you want us to do? Like, no. And then she goes on to say, we're all going to look for a gem like me. And I'm like, first of all, you're a pebble. But then she goes on and she sees Kenya walk by and she's like, Kenya, can me and you talk? Can me and you talk before we get on the sprinter, man? Because I need to know if you're going to be staying in the house or if you're not. Because if you're not going to come to the activities with us. So Kenya's like, okay, I'll see if I have time for you. And I'm like, Kenya, it's either now or never. Like, there is no other time in the future or in the past. Like, what are we doing? And honestly, Kenya was being so petty. I was kind of here for it, but at the same time, Kenya, you came to Marlo's trip. You came to her house to try to cause havoc or whatever. Like, why? Just go home. And I get it. I understand. We talked about it last week in my last review. How this is a show, she needs to get her Bravo checks and she needs to be there for these scenes. But this is what makes the show so kind of like awkward and kind of like breaking the fourth wall, where it's just like you have to be there by force, because realistically, nobody will be there to their enemy's house. Like Kenya would not realistically be at this trip to be there in front of Marlo when she just said she has all these demons. So why would she show up in the trip to begin with? Just go home and that's that. Back at your house, you don't have any demons besides Mark. So I don't understand why you're here. Marlo, she's trying to tell her like, okay, we need to talk. Kenya, Kenya, she's not having it. So Marlo, she's raising her voice even higher and talking to her a little bit more. So Kenya's like, no, you're not going to talk to me like that. And yeah, I was with Kenya with that because Marlo, yeah, you're not going to talk to me crazy like that either. Like, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning and you're talking crazy to me like that? No. But at the same time, Kenya, you're also being petty. So what other way is there to talk to you? So Kenya, she starts running around all over the house. I'm like, what is going on here? She's running around. Marlo is chasing her behind her. And I'm like, what is going on here? The camera crew, you would think that they were filming an episode of Maury, the way they were filming behind them and running up the stairs like, wait, no, I'm coming. With the big ass camera on their shoulders. I'm like, watch your step for a second. And then we hear Kenya, get off me, Marlo. For a second, I thought, okay, so did Marlo grab her or something? But no, she didn't grab her or anything. And they were just, you know, in each other's faces. And Kenya's like, if you need to tell me anything, you can tell me in front of all these women's faces. You don't need to have a conversation privately with me. So Marlo's just like, well, look, I just need to tell you, if you're not going to stay in this house with all of us, you're not coming. You're not invited. And that's that. Kenya's just like, okay, that's fine. Production, you say otherwise, right? So they all head outside to the parking lot. Marlo, she's getting more and more upset. And I'm like, Marlo, you just said a second ago that this whole trip was about peace and unity. And that you just said last week as well. You said it this episode as well, that you were not going to allow Kenya to get underneath your skin. And what are you doing? Allowing her to get underneath your skin. She goes on to say, Listen, Kenya, let this be the last time that you ever talk about Michael or William. You are never going to talk about them, okay? Nobody's ever going to take those boys away from me. So then Kenya was so bold because she was just like, yeah, because you already kicked them out of your house or yourself. And I'm like, oh, Kenya. And she was so bold to say it with her back turned against Marlo. I'm like, you obviously don't see that Marlo, that might trigger her or something, and she might grab you. And she said it so boldly, just talking to her phone. And then Sheree, she's standing to the side and she's like, Kenya. Because she knew that Kenya had crossed the line. And I'm like, now, Kenya, now you know you don't talk about children on the show like that. Even though there's an interview right now that I just saw right before I started filming that Marlo, she was just on an interview with Cynthia Bailey, you know, ex-former Housewives of the Atlanta. She was on this interview and she was saying that, oh, she was basically alluding that Brooklyn, that her daughter is basically not really hers, that she used somebody's eggs for this whole pregnancy. And I'm like, Marlo, what are we doing here? So if you have time, go look at that interview somewhere online. And I'm like, Marlo, come on now. So Kenya, I mean, was she lying? She did kick them out, right? So, I mean, yeah, but then Marlo, obviously, she got more and more pissed. And at this point, I hope it doesn't happen, but I feel like at this point, Marlo is going to say something about Brooklyn at some point to use it against Kenya. She's going to talk about her child in one way or another in the future. I just see it coming. And I know Marlo will stoop that low to go there. So then Marlo's just like, don't you ever talk about them like that again. Come on, everybody. We're all leaving. Let's go. This bitch is not going to stop anything. Let's go. So production was just like, Marlo, no, we're not leaving yet. We need Kenya. We don't need you. We need Kenya. So then Kenya, it's just like, anyway, I'm getting in the car. So then Sheree's just like, oh, so we have two cars. Kenya, she gets in the car. Marlo's telling the driver, nobody's leaving. Nobody's leaving if she's coming with us. Kenya, you need to get out. Kenya, she's going back and forth with her. And then here she dropped another line. She was like, no, stop. I'm not arguing you, bitch. Look, I'm an icon. You're an ex-con. And I'm like, ooh. You know Kenya was practicing that the night before at her house. Like, okay, so let's see. If me and Marlo get into it, this is what I'm going to say to her. I'm an icon and you're an ex-con, bitch. Oh, I know the audience is going to love that. Oh, they're going to put it in the previews probably. Okay, let me get ready. So as they're sitting in the driveway, Marlo refuses to go anywhere if Kenya's coming along, and Kenya's still in the truck. So next thing you know, 30 minutes go by, then an hour goes by, and they're still just all standing there. And I'm like, seriously? Like, this is what we're doing on this show? Seriously? This is why this whole show needs a whole entire recast, because this is what we're doing? We're gonna spend a whole episode in the driveway for an hour and 30 minutes? Absolutely not. There needs to be some changes, because this show, this city specifically, is on life support at this point, and I don't want it to be like, what is going on? Like, remember the good old days of Atlanta back in the day, like the beginning season? And this is what we're doing now? Absolutely not. So Marlo, she's sitting in the car. Kenya's sitting in the car. Neither one is budging. And honestly, this is my level of petty, because I'm not going anywhere if you're also coming along too. So we could be here all day. I don't care. So as much as I'm complaining, I'll be right there in Marlo's position as well. So then Candy, she's sitting on the side. She's so annoyed. And you know Candy was probably thinking, you know what? Maybe this should be my last season. You know what? Fuck it. Like, bring Phaedra back next season. I'm leaving. She was just so over it, as everybody else was. So then Drew, she walks up to Marlo. She's like, Marlo, come on now. Like, I want to go gem mining. I want to go gem mining. I'm like, no, you don't. So she's telling her, like, let's go. Like, I'll go in the car with you, or maybe the other car. I'm not sure. Marlo's just like, okay, fine. But you could go with Kenya. And then Drew, she throws a complete shot at what's her name, at Fatum. And she's like, oh, I don't want to go over there. I don't want to be with that bitch. I'm like, wait a minute. You know, Fatum was probably like, now see, why do I have to be in it? So Fatum, you know, she was probably so happy. Like, wait a minute. She just called me a bitch. Yes. I get camera time. Wait, who are you calling a bitch? And then production, no, the security out of nowhere, they were so quick to intervene. They grabbed her and they grabbed Drew and separated them. And I'm like, what is going on? It's not like they were about to get physical. Well, Fatum, I could picture her actually hitting Drew to try to get a moment on the show or try to get a peach or whatever. And I'm like, okay, security, it's not that serious. And then Drew, she's being held back by security and she's barking at her. And she's like, oh, what? You came on the trip to be Sheree's lapdog, right? Woof, woof, woof. So Sheree, here's Sheree. No, I don't have lapdogs. I have friends. I'm like, oh, Sheree, that sounded so cute coming out of her mouth. But no, she's your lapdog. So then Fatum, she's trying to have a moment. I'm not even sure if she was drunk. She just reminded me of like, oh, wait, and no, you come over here. Who you calling a drunk? No, come over here. And then she took off her fur jacket and everything, and she tried to get closer. And I'm like, Fatum, stop it. Like, you see, you're trying to fight somebody, and you're trying to get physical, and I'm still not entertained. Like, stop it. So eventually, she just, you know, got put to the side. Drew's over there. Eventually, everybody goes, Candy, she tells Drew, let's go over there and bounce on the trampoline. And I'm like, this is what we're doing on a trampoline? But they're making boomerangs. They're over there taking pictures. Candy's also in there. Marlo, she goes back inside and she starts crying. I am sorry, but I'm like, Marlo, here you go again, playing the victim for the 100th time and crying. And she's just like, you know, I just didn't want this. I didn't want this. No, I just didn't want this. I really wanted to have a good trip, and it's just, Kenya's just ruining everything, and I don't believe in all of this, you know, and I'm just over the whole thing. I didn't want this to be like this. And I'm like, Marlo, stop it. Like, again, Kenya is being annoying, and she is being petty as well, but you have also been petty this entire season. It's almost like Marlo versus Marlo and Kenya versus Kenya. It's kind of like they're both the same person at this point, or Marlo is showing who Kenya used to be, and now she's giving it back to Kenya. So then Kenya, she's in the backyard. Marlo, I'm not sure what happened, but she had a whole change of heart, or you know, production probably pulled her to the side like, okay, Marlo, you need to tell Kenya that she's allowed to go on this trip, because without her, we're shutting production. This is going to be your last season. You know what? Fuck it. We're going to cancel the Real Housewives of Atlanta permanently if she doesn't come on the trip. So, you know, Marlo was probably like, no, she could come jet mining. No, she could come. So Marlo, she goes outside and she's like, Kenya, you could come on the trip. Yeah, you could come. Just don't be in the same car as me. But you could come on the trip. And I'm like, oh, now all of a sudden you have a change of heart. Okay. So she goes and play on the trampoline with, I believe, Fatum and Moneta. Moneta's just there. I'm like, Moneta, you also don't add no type of, like, you know, nothing to the show either, besides just being there. They gave her a confessional. And I'm like, for what? But okay, so she's there, they're making boomerangs, and that's that, and we finally get this trip on the go. I forgot to mention that Sanya also tried to talk some sense into Kenya through the window of the truck, and she's like, come on, Kenya, all you have to do is just go out here and talk to Marlo. That's all you have to do to just piece things out. Kenya's just like, oh, it's so funny that you could see the situations between me and Marlo, that it's just so easy to hash out. But for you, Drew and Sheree, that's a whole fiasco for you. Huh, get out of my face. And honestly, if I was Kenya, I would have been like, mush. And then click the button like, okay, close window, close window, close window. Like, no, Sanya, everything that you're saying right now, this whole episode is invalid, because your situation with Drew, that's a whole other petty issue. Yet here you want to, you know, all of a sudden talk some sense into Kenya and Marlo, like, you know, I just feel like you two should talk it out. Yet you're making a whole issue with Drew out of who knows what at this point that I still don't know to this very day. So everything that Sanya's saying, just stop it. They finally get to the infamous gem mining place. And first of all, the first red flag that I would have seen in this place was the sign at the very front that said, guns welcomed here. That right there, I would have been like, no, we need to go somewhere else to film, because I'm not going in here. So they go in there, and I'm looking around and I'm like, yeah, no, this whole thing looks like a scary movie. So they're walking around, and then the camera zooms in on this sign. And of course, the sign says Clown 2024. And I'm like, of course. And then we see the owner of the shop, and I'm like, yeah, typical. So then Kenya, she sees the sign and she walks over, and then she knocks it down. As she should. And then she grabs the sign and then she gives it to the owner. She's like, oh, here, I disrupted your sign. Here you go. And then she does it with a smile to her face. And then she walks away, and I'm like, damn, Kenya, so petty. But you know what? I was here for it. And honestly, to be honest, as soon as I would have seen that sign, nope, I would have left with a quickness. Like, absolutely not. I'm not giving my money to this man or to this place. No. I'm not supporting that. And then on top of that, you know, this is a group of black women, and you're bringing them here in the middle of the forest with that sign on the front. No, I just feel like it was just an awful taste. Production should have been like, you know what? Maybe we should film somewhere else. We could find somewhere locally, or even go swimming at a lake or something. But no, the guy himself, he looked like he didn't want them in the shop either. Like, he looked so annoyed. And you could tell that the cameras in the production was probably the only thing that was honestly keeping them safe, because he just looked like he wanted to kick them out the whole place itself. And he was just like trying to force himself to be nice. Like, yeah, so this is the activity. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I'm just like, yeah, this whole thing is just very unwelcoming. So they go outside to do the activity, and I'm like, this is what we're doing? This is what gem mining is? I was with Drew when she said it in her confessional. This whole activity is corny and lame, and she should know, because that's what she was last season. I'm looking around, I'm like, this is what we're doing. We're basically polishing some rocks. And I'm like, this is what we're doing, Marlo. Like, Marlo, you have all this lavish lifestyle, all this money, and this is what you have us doing in the middle of the forest with this creepy man, with this, you know, place supporting that clown. And now we're cleaning some rocks? No. I would have just been back at the mansion and called it a day. We could have gone swimming or something. But no, they're doing this. So then the Wicked Witch of Atlanta, she comes over for Fatum. She sits in front of Drew. Drew, she sees her, and she's like, I'm not giving her a moment. So Drew, she gets up. Fatum, she gets upset. She's like, where are you going? Where are you going? I'm trying to film with you. I'm trying to fight with you so I could get a peach next season. Where are you going? And I'm like, Fatum, like, hold on. Give me 1 second, everybody. Here's my water bottle. Since you're so damn thirsty every scene. Here, I'll take a shot for you. Ooh, refreshing. Like, so annoying. I'm like, Fatum, go away. But you know, they do the little activity. The whole situation in the driveway was much funner than watching them here clean rocks. They're all heading back to the house, and once they're there, Marlo, she goes to her closet. She starts packing up all her shit. Sheree, she goes in there, and she's like, what's going on? What are you doing, Marlo? And Marlo's like, you know what? I'm just done. I'm just so emotionally drained right now, Sheree, and I'm not really feeling this trip. I really thought that, you know, this whole trip was going to be about positive vibes, but it's just the opposite, and I'm just over it. So I'm just going to get my stuff, and I'm going to get ready. Honestly, go around and tell everybody that I want to have a meeting with everybody in the living room in 5 minutes. So Sheree, she goes around the house to get everybody ready. Like, oh, okay, Marlo, she wants to talk to everybody in the living room, right? Marlo, she's all over it. She's in her feelings about everything, and obviously the trip didn't go the way she wanted to. So she's like, okay, let me go downstairs, and they're all in a circle, right? She starts off, and she's like, okay, so, you know, obviously this whole trip was about a unity, and I thought that we were all gonna come together and have fun and be together as friends, but that's just not the case, and I'm just really over it. I'm over it emotionally, and and then meanwhile, on the side, Drew, Drew was me, because Drew was just looking at her, and she was just eating her food. She was just eating her salad like, yeah, you're over it. She was such a mood. So then Marlo, she drops the bomb, and she's like, okay, well, you know what? I actually arranged a bunch of cars to come and pick everybody out, because I'm actually ending the trip. Everybody has to go home. And everybody was shocked. They were like, wait a minute, what's going on? What episode of Bad Girls Club is this? That we all have to go home like this, Marlo. You know, and you know, honestly, what the real issue was is that Marlo, she only had this house for like, what? She probably only rented it out for like maybe 48 hours, and time was ticking. So she knew that she only had probably 2 more hours of the house, and that's why she needed an excuse for everybody to go home. On top of that, she kind of let it slip in the car when she was like, oh, my nephew's birthday is tomorrow, and we have to do something for him. But yet, so if you hadn't canceled the trip, and you would have let the trip extend itself the way it was originally planned, so were you going to skip out on your nephew's birthday? That's what I'm not understanding. The timeline that Marlo was trying to explain wasn't really making sense. So then for Thirsty, she jumps in and she's like, well, you know, I want to explain myself really quickly. I should have been the bigger person with Drew. Drew is trying to like mumble something underneath her breath. So then for Thirsty, it's like, can you please shut the fuck up and let me finish talking? Drew, she puts her salad down and she's like, you know what? I have something for you. All of a sudden, you know, the queen of props, she brings out this little doggy bone, right? Like a little doggy bone, and she throws it at her. She's like, fetch, since you want to be Sheree's lapdog. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know. I really thought that she probably thought that it was really going to be like a moment or something, or an iconic moment. But to me, it was kind of lame. I'm like, boo. Like, what is that? Like props? I mean, last season, it was the wig at the Christmas party. And now you're bringing out doggy bones? It was lame, to be honest with you. And on top of that, I'm not sure if anybody caught it, but they cut this whole entire scene out because she also throws doggy food at, I believe at Sheree or for Thirsty. She throws a bunch of doggy food at them, but she actually, they cut the whole entire scene out. And I saw it online. It's floating online right now. And I'm like, that was part of the trailer and part of the preview. So I wonder why they cut that out. I mean, wouldn't you want to add some type of excitement to this episode? But they cut it out. So then Drew, she's over there. Sheree is another one. So Sheree, you know, this comment that you made, I don't know, it has me side-eyeing you. And I don't know if I might buy a She by Sheree shirt when it comes out in 5 years. Because she's like, oh, I'm not understanding why Drew threw that. What, was that Ralph's dildo? And I'm like, come on now. Like, this is another gay joke, like, implying that, oh, you know, Ralph, he needs a dildo because he's gay. As if straight men can't use dildos either. And I'm like, Sheree, boo, you're lame for that too. Like, it wasn't funny. It didn't land. It didn't do anything. And I hope that Andy actually questions you either at the reunion or on Watch What Happens Live or something, because, you know, all these little gay jokes that you always have to say every other season that you're on about somebody's husband, I'm just not liking. We saw you do it at the beginning of the season, and now you're doing it again here. Stop it. It's not funny, and it's not landing, because if somebody was to say the same thing about Tyrone, then all of a sudden you'll have a whole issue with it, right? It wouldn't be funny then, so it's not funny now. So then everybody, eventually, they're all like completely like shocked about this. They're like, what's going on? Kenya was like, you know what? You don't have to tell me anything else. She grabbed all her shit. She didn't even let Marlo finish talking. She grabbed her bag and she left. She was down the flight of stairs already. Candy, if you look at her, she was so annoyed. She was just like, the entire scene. So then Marlo's like, I'm sorry, I just can't. The whole trip is over. That's that. It is what it is. So she goes upstairs to talk to her makeup artist, and she's like venting to her and everything. And I'm like, Marlo, you're still not the victim in this. Like, I still don't see it for you. And that was that. Drew, for Thirsty, she was trying to get at Drew. Sheree's like, stop. Leave her alone. And that's that. Everybody was just, you know, packing up their stuff to go home. And that was that. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pretend like this episode just never happened. Like, it was the most random events ever in one episode. And that was that. What did y'all think about this episode? And whose side are you on? Are you Team Kenya or are you Team Marlo? Do you think that Fatum was doing too much? Or do you think that Drew was doing too much with the little bone thing that she threw or whatever, that she was trying to have a moment? Let me know down in the comments. Bye, everybody. Mwah.